Would the members of the Toronto and East York Community Council please come to Committee Room 1? Thank you.
Huh? I said, because he works all the time. I just use it because it's faster. See nothing happens. No, nothing. There's a speaker on this phone.
That's right. It's at the beginning. It's
oh boy.
Yes, exactly. Why is it the same thing?
Done?
Yes.
I know you.
Nick is my actual Nick is my district.
Yeah, we're happy. So we can move on.
Linda sorted all out with you? Jockeying for position? Yes. It's okay. I only have one item, so what time's your item?
We're not time. We're, I think, 34 or something like that. We're very late. So
Oh, very late. Okay.
I don't know why we're sitting here.
Yeah, yeah.
I originally sat in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, normally. We'll get her both. Mine's time for 11:30, so we should be okay. I've got a lot of things going on right now. Mario just sort of last minute. Come down for me today. No, Diane's acting now, yeah. We're in, by the end of the month, we should all be yeah, we need it.
Yeah, no, I remember. More pleasant. It's just like, you just need to.
Yeah, that's it,
And everyone kind of knows
rotated through the CBO's office, 3 people now in the last year and a half. Everybody's focus shifts, and before you know it, you're trying different taskmaster trying to. Right now, I think this one does. I think Diane right now is just holding fast.
Yeah. So really, like
Yeah. Yeah.
with us.
Well, no, I got my part's gonna go fast. The afternoon, I have Magda come in and sit in it. I have meetings in the afternoon that I have to attend. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and then this morning I was looking at and then I was like, oh, right next to it. Looking at it, I mean, nuts in the snow, right? Like, so I was like, you know what, for my blood pressure and sanity, I'm going to take the subway. Well, actually, weird statement, because a lot of people find
The opposite, yeah. The subway gets kind of, yeah, I drive in all the time, so I just try to stay off.
You know what? I don't
I drove the drive in from Richmond. I get off on the Don Valley Parkway. From Richmond across to here.
Yeah, that sucks. See, at least for me, there's a park.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one day I was talking about it. We were when I was saying we're going to drive downtown with it. And then it's like, if anyone knows, right? I'm like, like, so yeah, like, it's like, trust me, that's a faster route. Because sometimes vagina's fine.
Right,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's expensive. Like, especially if there's something out on it, or
Forget
ACC.
it. Forget about it.
It's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
I find it easier from here. I'll just find it else. That's what Gerard.
Yeah.
Gerard or Wellesley, actually. So much construction, as we all know.
Yeah, the construction's the problem. I don't know who's approving all that.
Construction.
I don't know.
Crossing all the lanes.
Who's doing all that? Who's approving all the downtown construction?
And then there's that stupid kid. She's not here, guys.
Nervous.
On the record. On the record. Is it online?
I'm gonna walk up to Mary and say, "You said you weren't coming. If you're here, come sit down."
Okay, hold on. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Councillor Wong Tam is on her way, but we have quorum, and it's 1:45, so we have to get started or we'll break quorum. So the first item, hold on a second, is the chair and members gratefully acknowledge that the Toronto and East York Community Council meets on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. The next item of business, I guess, is to ask if we have any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, we need a motion to confirm the minutes from November 14th, 2017. Do I have someone move those? Councillor Troisi, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Okay, next. So we're going to start with the non-timed items on page, so item 31, I believe it is on page 56 of 132. Seems like a small agenda. Okay, so appointments to business improvement areas, boards of management. We have Councillor Layton, maybe not. Councillor Mahevik, would you like to, or Councillor Troisi, one of you would like to move item 29.31, appointments to Business Improvement Areas Board of Management? Great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 2932, which is 60 Shooter Street, Public Art Plan. That's Councillor Wong Tam, so I'll hold that because I don't know what she would like to do with that. And she's on her way. Next item, 29.33, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes, 38 Bathurst Street. Councillor Layton.
I'll hold that.
Okay. Moving right along. Item 29.3, oh, okay, maybe we'll go back to item 33. Or 33,
33,
yes.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 2934, the proposed official naming of the park at 850 Coxwell Avenue, East York Civic Center, Ward 29. That's mine. I'm going to move staff recommendation and just let people know that this is just a matter of housekeeping that came to our attention through the facilities staff, and I want to thank them for bringing this to our attention. In 1939, there was a bylaw that was passed but never confirmed. We've been under the impression that this park has been named Memorial Gardens Park. It hasn't been officially named, so now we are cleaning that up and making it official. So huge thanks to facilities, real estate, and of course the parks, forestry, and recreation people. Thank you so much. All those in favor? No. Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Next item, 29.35, 495 to 517 Wellington Street West, zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Cressy.
I have an amendment which is for expanded notice. It is the Wong Tam special. If I can move.
We're moving it.
There it is on the screen. It's for expanded notice. It's the Wong Tam special, and with that, I can move the staff recommendations.
Okay, so we're moving. Can we do those as a package, or do we have to do them? We'll do the amendment first. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. The item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. Item 29.36, 400 to 420 King Street West zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Cressy.
Again, I'm going to move an amendment for expanded notice, the Wong Tam special, and with that, I can move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. 29.37, 265, I'm assuming this is Belial Street, zoning amendment and rental housing demolition.
There's a debate in the neighborhood about exactly the pronunciation. We call it Beloil. It's different
Others
in the
Belial.
UK. I know.
Okay. Rental housing demolition application, preliminary report. Councillor Matlow.
I move the recommendation along with the extended notice area.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right, item 38, T 29.38, 114 to 120 Church Street and 59 Richmond Street zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Troisi.
Thank you. Move approval of staff recommendations with additional standard motion for expanded notification.
Okay, so we'll take the amendment first. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. Item 29.39, 155 Wellesley Street East, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and rental housing demolition applications, preliminary report. That's Councillor Wong Tam. I will hold that until she arrives. Next item, TE 29.40, 1249 to 1251 Queen Street East zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor McMahon.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I have a bit of laryngitis, which my family is thrilled about. I'm just going to move this with the expanded notice.
Okay, so we'll take the amendment first. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. 29.41, curbside management strategy, parking amendments, delegated locations, notice of pending report.
Yeah, we do have the report now, sorry.
Okay, so it's no longer a notice of pending report. We have the report. I'm not sure who wants to deal with this item. Councillor Troisi or Cressy or Wong Tam. It's item 41.
I'm going to hold that down.
Okay.
Thank you. And the same when we get to item 42, I'll ask to hold that down.
Okay, well, we're on item 42 now, so I guess it's the curbside management strategy, parking amendments, non-delegated locations. So Councillor Cressy is holding that. TE 29.43, residential on-street electric vehicle charging stations, parking amendments, delegated locations.
Madam Chair, if I may, at the request of staff, I have a deferral motion for this and the next item. A withdrawal motion, apparently. They're going to come back. The bylaws weren't completed. They're just going to bring it back when they're ready.
Okay, so you're moving a notice to, a motion to withdraw the item?
Yeah.
It sounds bad, but they've asked for this so that they can properly prepare the bylaw.
Okay, well, all those in favor of to withdraw? Any opposed? That carries. Councillor Wong Tam. Okay. Item 29.44 is also the residential on-street electric vehicle charging stations, parking amendments, non-delegated locations.
I have the same. Oh, the staff asked me to move it on both, but you're welcome to if you'd like to.
No, Councillor, it's to withdraw. Okay. As part of another item? Okay, great. So on the motion to withdraw from the agenda? No opposition? That's great. What do we have? TE 29.45, construction staging area, 19 Western Battery Road, Ward 19. Councillor Layton.
Yes. Is it possible to move a reluctant staff approval, to reluctantly move staff approvals? It's not in the procedural bylaw. I'll move staff approvals, but note my reluctance.
So you're going to move the recommendations in the report?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item TE 29.46, construction staging area, 410 and 440 Front Street West. Councillor Cressy. Excuse me, Councillor Cressy. It's your item.
I'm going to move the staff recommendations, item 46.
Okay, so all those in favor of the recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Item 47, construction staging area, Murray Street, 600 University Avenue. Councillor Cressy.
I have an amendment, if it can be put on the screen. This is an amendment to the construction staging area to make allowance for the University Avenue ER drop-off that is required. We've worked closely with Mount Sinai Hospital on this.
Okay, we have the amendment on the screen. Okay, just a moment.
Isn't that in there already? Yeah, and there's an additional technical amendment to change 2 words that I've been advised that staff require. So I have this amendment, which is the substance of it, to allow the University Avenue ER drop-off, along with, I'll move an additional technical amendment, which have 2 word changes I've been advised from staff.
So can we vote on, sorry, just a moment.
That's right, with addition.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the motions as a package, and then we're going to vote on the item as amended. So the motions as a package, all those in favor? Okay, no opposition? That carries. On the item as amended, all those in favor? That carries because there's no opposition. Everyone? Just a second. I've been asked to hold items 29.48, the construction staging area on Frederick Street, 158 Front Street East, and also been asked to hold item 49, construction staging area 100 Howard Street. Okay, so we'll have those motions prepared from the staff, and then we'll move along. Item 50, construction staging area 143 Avenue Road. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report and to thank staff for adding all the additional recommendations I generally add. It's already been done. There's no additional motions here. Thank you.
So as on the item, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 51, I'm sorry, did we have? 51 is good. Okay, 51 is good. Construction staging area, time extension, 17 Dundonald. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you again. I'd like to move staff recommendations, and again to thank staff for already adding the amendments I would have moved in advance. Thank you.
Okay, great. So on the recommendations before us, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Whipping through the agenda. This is fabulous. Item 52, construction staging area, Hazelton Avenue, 128 Hazelton Avenue. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you. I'd like to move one amendment just to direct the applicant to establish a construction management working group that meets monthly and invite local stakeholders, including transportation services, municipal licensing and standards, Toronto buildings, adjacent neighbors, local resident groups, and local BIAs. That would be my amendment.
And the recommendation.
And then to move the recommendations as amended.
Okay, so we'll take the amendment first. On the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. On the item as amended?
No, because I've.
That carries. Item 50.
Item isn't adopted,
I did.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Item 53, construction staging area, Davenport Road, 128 Hazelton Avenue.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the same motion I just moved for the prior item, again to establish the working group. And with that, then to move the item as amended.
Okay, so we'll take the amendment first. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 54, construction staging area, 81 Bay Street. Councillor, that's the hold? Okay, sorry, we're going to have those motions prepared, sorry. Item 55, construction staging area, 1327 Queen Street East. Councillor McMahon.
Sure. For 55 and 56, I have motions being sent. I think they're here already, but I'm not sure. So not sure if it stand down.
So we'll hold them down and have them prepared, and then we'll try to deal with them quickly.
Thank you.
At a later date. Is that item 56 as well, Councillor
Yep.
McMahon, 1884 Queen Street East?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Item 57, relocation of accessible loading zone, Wellington Street West. Councillor Troisi.
Thank you. Move approval of staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor of the recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. This is item 58, removal of on-street accessible loading zone, Salmon Avenue. That is in my area. And move to adopt the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thanks for your support, colleagues. Item 59, extension of permit parking hours, Queensdale Avenue. That's in my ward, and I believe we have to withdraw that because we've already dealt with it in November.
I have to look at it. I just got the motion. Then
Okay, so we'll hold it down, and then we'll go back to it. But item 60, extension of permit parking hours, Grant Street and Kintyre Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'd like to move to approve, please.
Okay, we have before us the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 61, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, December 2017, non-delegated. Councillor Bailao is...
So I'm just going to stand that down for her till she arrives. Thanks.
Okay, great. Councillor McMahon is holding that in for Councillor Bailao. Item 62, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, December 2017, delegated. Anyone on that list would like to move that item? Okay, Councillor Cressy is moving the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 63, parking amendments, Augusta Avenue between Wales Avenue and Denison Square. Councillor Cressy.
Happy to move staff recommendations, and thank you to transportation staff.
Okay, we have before us the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 64, parking amendment, Albany Avenue, Ward 21. Councillor Mihevc.
Move approval of the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 65, parking amendments, Grant Street and Kintyre Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Move to approve.
Okay, all those in favor of the recommendations in the report? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, so actually, Councillor Fletcher, I'm going to ask you to hold that item because apparently we need to have a motion prepared.
Yes,
So I'm assuming you want to do the reverse of what staff are recommending. Okay, so we'll hold that item down and pretend we didn't vote. All right, so item 66, parking amendments, Avonlea Boulevard. Councillor Davis.
I'd like to move adoption of the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Traffic control signals, Danforth Avenue and Woody Crest Avenue. That's in my area, so I'd like to move that council adopt the recommendations in this report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So hold on a second.
Of the staff recommendations, Chair. No, there is no alternate rec there. Yes, the staff recommendation.
So we're going to actually go back to item 65 because there was some confusion and now that's been cleared up. So can I know what we're doing?
The recommendation, staff which I rarely do, so they were pretty excited and then it got pulled.
They went up, down, had like a series of emotions that they went through.
We should have a recorded vote on that one.
Okay. Did you want one?
No, no.
Oh, okay. So we're going to be going back. We're on item 65, parking amendments, Grant Street and Kintyre Avenue. Councillor Fletcher has moved the recommendations in the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
We're on 68. It's a turn prohibition on Squires Avenue. Councillor Davis.
Move adoption of the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 69, road alteration, Dundas Street East and Coxwell Avenue, non-delegated. I don't know why it says Councillor Troisy, but it's really Councillor McMahon.
Sorry.
Councillor McMahon.
Well, we're similar. So I'm going to move staff recommendations and remind you that this is a fantastic new initiative that you've heard me talk about before called Raindrop Plaza. It's the first stormwater demonstration site in the city. Councillor Davis will be thrilled that it's a Green Streets pilot project. And many people have been involved, local schools, the First Nations schools doing some Indigenous artwork for us. There's eco-literacy, the ROM is involved, Carleton University is involved. A group in Paris and Poland are following this. And it's a good news story. So happy to have your support. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for bringing us a good news story. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Let there be more good news stories in 2018. Item 70, speed hump poll results, Barry Avenue. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, I'd like to move the alternative recommendations.
Okay, do we have those? And we have the alternate recommendations before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, we have to adopt the item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 71, speed hump poll results, Ridge Hill Drive. Councillor Mihevik.
Recommendations again?
Okay, so do we have a motion for the alternate recommendations? Okay, so on the alternate recommendations, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. 72, speed hump poll results, Bain Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
I hope you have a motion to defer that one cycle. Yeah. No, it was to be sent this morning. Okay, well, that's what I'm going to do.
Can we okay, so we have to defer it to the next meeting. Councillor Fletcher?
Yep.
Okay, motion to defer. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Chair, could I, if you don't mind, on a point of personal privilege, just briefly, I wanted to introduce Amina Mohammed, who's here at the back, if she would stand up, who is, today's her first day. She is one of our new Muslim Youth Internship members here at the city, a program created by Councillor Shan, and I know seconded by Councillor Layton, and so I wanted to welcome Amina on her first day to the city of Toronto.
Okay. Welcome. I hope it's everything you expect it to be.
Oh, no, it can.
Or have no expectations, maybe then it won't be so bad and a big a
What
disappointment.
did you say, Josh?
Keep expectations low.
Oh, okay, so item 73, traffic calming speed humps on Crawford Street. Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move approval of the installation of traffic calming.
So those are the alternate recommendations. Do we have those? So on the alternate recommendations, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 74 is traffic calming speed humps, Pendrith Street. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Out of an abundance of caution, I missed at the beginning of the meeting declare a conflict on this, a conflict of interest on this item. I live on Pendrith Street. So while there's no fiduciary commitment, out of an abundance of caution, Councillor Cressy had agreed to take carriage of this item.
So you'll leave the room and we'll take a recorded vote. Great.
That's one of our phrases, abundance of caution.
Okay, so he's left the room. Councillor Cressy, item 74.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
I think you're moving the alternate recommendations? Okay, so we have the alternate recommendations before us. All those in favor, this is a recorded vote. So everyone in favor?
Oh, recorded.
Councillor Davis, are you in favor or are you against? Okay, you're in favor. Okay, Councillor Davis, Councillor Mihevik, Fletcher, Cressy, Fragadakis, Wong Tam, Troisy, Matlow, and McMahon. That's unanimous. I don't see any opposition. The item as amended. Sorry, Councillor Layton, we're in the middle of a vote. No, we're doing the item as amended. So all those in favor on the item as amended, this is also a recorded vote. So, Councillor Davis, I'm assuming you're with us. Yes, Councillor Davis. I'm not, they're going to change it, I'm sure. So Davis, Mihevik, Fletcher, Cressy, Fragadakis, Wong Tam, Troisy, Matlow, and McMahon. No opposition. That carries unanimously. Okay, Councillor Layton. The next item is yours. No, actually, it's not. Traffic calming. It's item 75, traffic calming speed humps on Claxton Boulevard. Councillor Mihevik.
Not to be outdone by the councillors south of me, I'd like to move the alternate recommendations.
Okay.
Support the speed humps.
Do we have those? Okay. So we're moving. He's moved the alternate recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 76. I'm seeing a trend here. Traffic calming speed humps, Winnett Avenue. Councillor Mihevik.
Yes, not to be outdone. Approve the alternate regulations to allow for polling for speed humps.
Okay, so all those in favor of the alternate recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 77, traffic calming speed humps, Hillsdale, not to be confused with Hillside Avenue West. Councillor Matlow.
Yes. Would you like a motion? To move the...
Sure.
I'd be happy to oblige. Move the alternate recommendation to proceed with the polling.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Great. Item 78, traffic calming speed humps, Lonsdale Road. Councillor Matlow.
I'm also moving the recommendation to, the alternate recommendation and to proceed with the polling.
Okay, all those in favor of the alternate recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 79, traffic calming speed humps, St. Joseph Street. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, I'd like to move alternative recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor of the alternate recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We are on item 80, which was a deferred item from November of last year, proposed installation of speed bumps, Wagstaff Drive. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, it was deferred in order to measure the gap in the speed bumps to make sure that front-end loaders could go through, and I don't think that's happened yet. So I need to defer that one more cycle. Staff are going to measure that.
Okay, so deferred till the next meeting?
Yep.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 81, amendment to the existing speed hump plan, Langley Avenue between Carlaw Avenue and Logan Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Well, this is the most exciting motion ever. I'm not really, but I am moving approval of an extra speed hump that has been recommended by staff.
Wow, okay,
Thank you
great.
very
That's
much. Part of our Riverdale traffic planning. We did a site visit, and that's what we're getting, so.
great. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Great. Item 82, vehicle width restriction, Barbara Goddard Lane. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 83, bus loading zone, Mill Street. Councillor Troisi.
Yep. Move approval, staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 84, Moss Park and Ted Reeve Arena nominating panel. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendations in the report.
Great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. This is the fastest moving meeting ever. Item 85.
Very good chair.
Don't want to jinx it. Item 85, it's reopening item TE 26.109, traffic calming speed humps, Witchwood Avenue. I don't know why it says Councillor Fletcher. I'm sure it means Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, I'd like to approve the recommendations before you. They're technical amendments necessary to do what needs to be done with speed humps.
First, the reopening.
Okay.
Any opposed? Okay, that's been reopened. Now we have the motion before us. All those in favor of that? Any opposed? That carries. Do I need a motion? Okay, great. Item 86, we have a stop sign request, Dewborn Avenue and Glen Eyre Road. Councillor Mihevc.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Okay, great. We have the recommendations before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 87, request to review traffic operations and safety on Park Road from Church Street to Rosedale Valley Road. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendations contained in the letter.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We have item 88, nominations for appointment to the Board of Management of the 519. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendations in the letter.
Great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 89, are we?
Hold.
We're going to hold this item down in case we have any additions to that. Oh. So we need a motion to add to the agenda items 90 to 98.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Wong Tam, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we could deal with items 90 right now? So, okay, we're going to deal with appointment to the Apple Grove Community Complex Board of Management. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. So this is new, and I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion before us. Everyone in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 91, appointments to the Board of Management of Cecil Community Center. Councillor Cressy.
I will move the appointments.
Okay, the recommendations in the letter, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 92, turn restrictions, 501 St. Clair Avenue West, Rise Condominium. Councillor Mahevik.
With the recommendations contained in the correspondence.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 93, I'm not sure how you say that, Machito Winery by the Glass permit application to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. Councillor Layton.
Yes, I'll move the recommendations in my letter.
Great, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Maybe we can go on a class trip. Item 94, Foxbar Road Parking Amendment, rescind 10-minute daycare pickup parking. Councillor Matlow.
Because the daycare is not there. So
okay, good. Just was wondering what you were doing.
So I move the recommendations in my letter.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. 95 is the request to designate 1 Edmund Gate under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Councillor Matlow.
I'm very happy to move the recommendation in my letter.
Great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item 96, turn restrictions at Church Street and Wood Street. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendations in the letter, and also just to thank staff for their work. We're trying to make this particular intersection around Church Street Public School much safer, and hopefully this particular set of actions will get us there.
Great. Let's all vote for safety around schools. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We have item 97, pedestrian crossover relocation, Carlaw Avenue and Langley Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Just check with the clerk that I need to introduce this as a new item of business.
It's been introduced.
It's already introduced, sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, I see, okay. It's on now.
Yes.
So this was deferred from council, it was sent back from council, and I'm going to just refer this to staff to revisit their recommendation with the reviewing this under Vision Zero.
Okay, so we have a referral motion. Okay. All of those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We have item 98, 88 Queen Street East, Public Art Plan. Councillor Wong Tam.
All right, I'm just going to hold that for now.
Okay. So before we get started on the timed items, we had some quick items that were being held while I was holding them for Councillor Wong Tam. We're just. Oh, okay. So, well, one was a public art plan. Item 32. So, Councillor Wong Tam, item 32, which is the public art plan for 60 Shooter Street.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. There was also one I was holding for Councillor Wong Tam that was a preliminary report, 155 Wellesley Street East, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and rental housing demolition applications. Item 39.
Thank you very much. Chair, I'd like to move the standard recommendations, if I can have that on the screen. Yes, the additional ones, yeah.
So we'll move the amendment first. All those in favor? Any opposed? The item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And I believe all the other ones were transportation related and they're not ready. So that will take us to item number 1, at which point I will hand over the chair to Councillor Wong-Tam.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for all your help. So we're on item number T29.1, naming of a public lane north of Bernard Avenue, extending between Madison Avenue and Huron Street. This is a timed item for 9:30. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak to this item? Members of the public looking for speakers for item 29.1. Okay, seeing none. This is located in Ward 20. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move to adopt the staff recommendations, which is to name the lane to Gwen Egan Lane. Gwen was a long-standing community activist and leader in the Annex neighborhood, not just on local files, but city building and city at large files like stopping the Spadina Expressway. And it is a privilege to have the chance to name this lane after her. And I want to just thank Lynn Friesen, a local resident, for spearheading this initiative. And with that, I will move the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Are anyone else like to speak to this matter? No, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. TE 29.2, naming of a public lane south of Queen Street East, extending between Booth Avenue and Logan Avenue. Any members of the public who are here to speak to this item? Seeing no members of the public. Members of the public, if you are here to speak on any other item on the agenda, please see the clerk and they will make sure that you are updated on the speakers list. This matter is in item Ward 30. Any members of who have questions of staff? Seeing none. Councillor Fletchy.
Very happy to move the naming of the lane, the Lewis Keston Lane, who was a pharmacist who helped the poor very much in South Riverdale through his decades of work. Very fantastic man, and certainly want to remember him.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 29.3, naming of a public lane located north of Queen Street East, extending westerly from Willow Avenue. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Any questions from the members to staff? Don't see any. Ward 32, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to move this naming of a laneway, and thanks to local resident Gail Ferguson for championing this. Chris Van Santon Lane. Chris was born with cerebral palsy and lived on Willow Avenue forever until he recently passed away, unfortunately, and he was an icon in the community, a real kind of ham. And it was great because everyone rallied around him whenever he would have a seizure or an emergency situation, and they rescued him through the laneway, and that was also his kind of playground for his electric wheelchair and whatnot. So it's quite fitting. So I ask your support on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, and congratulations to your community. TE 29.4, permanent closure to vehicular traffic of a 0.3 meter wide strip of land on the east side of the north-south portion of the public lane located at the rear of 1126 to 1140 Gerard Street East and 387 and 389R Leslie Street. I take no pleasure in reading those titles. Hope you don't make me read it again. Any members of the public who are interested in speaking to this matter? No, seeing none. Any members with questions to staff? Ward 30, Councillor.
Could you just repeat that again?
I knew that was coming from you.
No, it's okay. I'm going to move the recommendation to permanently close that lane.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 29.5, 26 Ernest Avenue, City-initiated zoning amendment final report. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring this back into Community Council. Questions to staff?
No.
Members to speak. Ward 18, Councillor.
So that's Councillor Bilals, and I'll just take carriage of it by standing it down for her.
Okay, we're going to go with that. TE 29.6, 85 to 91 Broadway Avenue and 198 Redpath Avenue, rental housing demolition application under Municipal Code 667. This is a final report. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Okay. Any members who have questions for staff? Seeing none, then Councillor Matlow.
I move staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Yes. T 29.7, 21-35 Sherbourne Street North, zoning. Yeah, we're okay? Yeah, so, sorry. I was just checking the time to make sure that we didn't jump the queue, but we are not going to do that. TE 29.7, 21-35 Sherbourne Street North, zoning amendment and rental application demolition. Final report. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak to that? I see one registered speaker. Is there anyone here to speak to this matter? Seeing none? Okay. This item should be heard, I believe, with TE 29.12. They are related items, and the 29.12 item, just to read the title, is the alterations for 4 properties and demolition of 1 heritage property and construction of a replacement structure in the South Rosedale Heritage Conservation District, and the addresses are 27, 29, 31, and 33 Sherbourne Street North. We will take the deputations of these 2 matters together, and we will decide on this matter as a whole. I'd like to call Dave Riley to the table. Thank you. When you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of Community Council. My name is David Riley with SGL Planning and Design, and I'm the planning consultant here for the applicant at 21 to 35 Sherbourne. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that we do support staff's recommendations for the approval of the proposed development. We wanted to take the opportunity also to thank staff for moving the proposal along to this point for recommendation, particularly Mr. Kevin Friedrich sitting over there, as well as all heritage preservation staff. You know, in our opinion, we do believe this is a great development, excellent opportunity for the lands, bringing it back to a state that represents the historical value of the property, and the development completely compatible with the community. We've heard from community members in the area, the South Rosedale ratepayers, as well as meetings with Councillor Wong Tam, and we're just very happy where we are, and thanks, staff.
Thank you very much for your comments. I suspect there may be no questions, but I won't preempt that. Any questions for our speaker? Okay, seeing none. Any other members of the public who are here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, we'll just bring this inside. Any members with questions to staff? Don't see any hands going up. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report, as well as the recommendations that came from the Toronto Heritage Board, and to thank the Preservation Board, and to thank staff for their hard work. This has been a file that has been sitting on their desks for many years, as it has been on the desks of the applicant and the family who's making the changes to their property. This was certainly not a straightforward request, but I think that a lot of goodwill and collaboration manifests itself in an outcome that everyone can be agreeable to. And so you will recognize that we do not have any deputants who have come out to speak against this particular modification and demolition from the Rosedale community, and that signifies the community's overall support for the recommendations moving forward. So again, I want to just thank staff. This is not necessarily straightforward work, but you worked really hard with the applicant to getting things done, and that's why we have a positive resolution before us today.
We need her back at the table.
Yeah, so she's coming back. So we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the recommendations in the staff report, we're voting on TE 29.7 first. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We are now voting on TE 29.12. This is the Heritage report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Congratulations. TE 29.8. Old East York Village, odd and even numbers between 955 to 1068 Coxwell Avenue, 521 and 561 O'Connor Drive, and even numbers between 586 to 394 Plains Road. Zoning bylaw amendment application. This is a final report. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll just bring this into Community Council. Are there any members here with questions of staff?
I have no questions of staff, but I have a motion that's not quite ready, so I think we'll have to hold it down.
Okay, sure, Councillor. I will hold that down in your name, and when you're ready, you let us know. T 29.9, 305 Dawes Road, official plan amendment application, final report. There are speakers on this item, starting with Karen Emerson. Karen, welcome. Yeah. Put your mic on. Can you press the button in front of you?
I can. Good morning. Thank you. Hello, my name is Karen Emerson, and I am the Artistic Director over at the Children's Peace Theatre, 305 Dawes Road. We have been the very, very, very grateful leaseholders and stewards of the land over at 305 Dawes. And for any of you that are not familiar with the Children's Peace Theatre is always a good news story. We've been a good news story since 2001 when we were mandated to create a culture piece with the young people of Toronto, and we will be moving forward for many years to come. I'm here really just to take the opportunity to give thanks and say thank you to the City of Toronto for being an incredible partner in the work that we've been doing over those years. We've been in the house at 305 Dawes and the Massey Goulding Estate for well, our parent organization has been there for 20 years. I've been with the organization for 13 years. And I just want to share with you a couple of the highlights of the work that we've been doing in partnership with you guys at the city. So, I mean, Councillor Davis has been an incredible champion of our work. She's seen the way that we have transformed the community and worked with many young people. And honestly, like without any exaggeration, we have saved the lives of many young people over there. We are one of the only, we are pretty much the only cultural venue over in that neighborhood, and we have been pivotal in organizing and putting together our youth services network in that neighborhood. We have served thousands and thousands of young people, and we intend to move forward doing that. In fact, the good news moving forward is that we're continuing to work with the city to do some barrier-free entrance for the young people, barrier-free washrooms. We have a lot of plans moving forward. Over the years, we've put in a music studio for young people. We've put in a commercial kitchen. We've been able to create a lot of programming for young entrepreneurs. We have just recently been recognized by the Canada Council for the Arts to receive core funding moving forward for 3 years, because they're looking at the work that we've been doing as one of the highlights in the arts organizations across the country. They're looking at us to do sector innovation, looking at a model that we've been developing with young people. So I just wanted to congratulate the city on being a part of that work, and the investment that you've made in us has been able to be leveraged by all of the arts councils at 3 different levels of government. So I'm just here to really support the staff recommendations that we renew the lease for the Children's Peace Theatre over at 305 Dawes Road. And once again, just to thank you for all of the support that you've shown for the work that's going on over there over the many years. Thank you.
Great. Sorry, thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Peter Reagan. Peter Reagan? Okay, and our next speaker is Amifika Brown. Hello, welcome. The clock is on your left-hand side, and you'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Is it on? Is it on? Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Amifika Brown. I am a youth worker in Toronto, and I'm really here to support Children's Peace Theatre and to urge you to let this lease go forward. I started working with Children's Peace Theatre in 2015 with a program called Black Youth Nation, and the participants of this program really loved the surroundings of 305 Dawes, that it was like a house tucked away where they could be themselves, and the community needs a space like this for folks who are, you know, Indigenous, racialized, for LGBTQ folks, they need safe spaces, and this CPT has been that sort of community hub in Crescent Town and the surrounding community, and it would be a shame like not to like let this lease go forward. And yeah, it's really vital to have these spaces, and I just really want to give my support for Children's Peace Theatre.
Amifika, thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who are here for this particular matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring this inside Community Council. Are there any questions for staff? Don't see any hands. Any speakers? Councillor Davis.
I will move the staff recommendations. This is an unusual situation. The Children's Peace Theatre has had a lease for 20 years, and in order to renew the lease under our current bylaws, we have got to surplus the land. So it is and we have to make an official plan amendment. This is not the only location that is facing this same situation, because they are in a park, which is an official, so it needs an OP amendment in order to renew the lease. It was kind of confusing for both me and for the community, but we had an open house, and we have had some input from the community, and I am pleased to support the recommendations and the continued operation of the Children's Peace Theatre. They really have saved lives in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All those in sorry, Councillor McMahon, my apologies.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo Councillor Davis's comments, and as someone who lives in the East End, I've experienced many a fantastic event, including my favorite, the Great Gatsby event years ago at the Children's Peace Theatre. So kudos to you and all the great work you do for us and our youth. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Any others who would like to speak to this item? No? Seeing then, the report is before us, moved by Councillor Davis. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.10, 378, 388 Shooter Street, 47-63 Sutton Avenue, and 150 to 160 Sackville Street, Common Elements Condominium and Part Lot Control Exemption Applications. Final report. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring this inside. Any members with questions to staff? Don't see any hands. Councillor Troisi.
Great, thank you. We'll move approval of staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.11, alterations to a designated heritage property, 421 Roncesvalles Avenue. We do have a speaker, Jack Gibney. Are you here? I see you. Welcome, Jack. If you place the document facing up and, yes, perfect. Great.
I'm Jack Gibney of the Sunnyside Historical Society, and due to the importance of this matter, my colleague Darrell Lando, also of the Sunnyside Historical Society, has come to speak to you.
Okay.
We're talking about 421 Roncesvalles Avenue, and it's slated for a great deal of development and height. The city is opposed to this, and we are supporting the city on that. The area immediately north is an industrial triangle that has been developed and intensified very high, and we're in favor of that. We're concerned about the height that the developer is proposing. You can see ghosted above the picture is their current proposal, and we understand there's a need for densification. We'd be happy to see either the 5 stories or, if it's set back, a 6-story, so that we can preserve the appearance of the neighborhood. From these buildings going south, you head down into the actual village of Roncesvalles, and it's a historic village. It's beautiful and it's beloved by the neighborhood. And this extra height would set a very negative precedent for the area, which we're hoping that you will stop. Very easily and quickly, I was able to find quite a few historic pictures of this property because so many people have posted things. The first one on the left is out of Facebook, showing 1924 and 2009. The second one is 1919. The third one is 1963. There's a 1935. And the building directly across the road is the oldest continuing business in the neighborhood, and people love that. So we're in favor of intensification. We'd like to keep some farmland and some wilderness, but we'd also like you to limit the amount of height. The last thing to be said is that we understand the developer has a problem. The taxes require better and best use for the property, and the only way they're going to be able to support that tax base is by making it very high. And they've come back with about 4 proposals, all of them very, very big. So this is probably a problem we will need the provincial government's support changing the taxing laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Seeing none. Are there any other members of the public who are here to speak to this matter this morning? Seeing none. Are there members with questions for staff? Seeing no hands. This is a matter that's sitting in Ward 14. Councillor Perks is not here. What I'd like to do is just simply hold the item down. I know he's going to be here shortly, and we will revisit this matter as soon as he arrives. We are now heading to item T, 29.14, alterations to a heritage property intention to... Oh, sorry, I apologize. I just jumped one. T, 29.13, alterations to a designated heritage property intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement regarding 771 Yonge Street. Are there members of the public who are here to speak to this matter? So I'd like to move, I don't see any members of the public who are here to speak to this matter. Are there any members with questions of staff? Seeing none, I would like to move the recommendations that were brought forward by the Preservation Board. Okay. Are you putting it on the screen? Okay, it's going to be put onto the screen. Okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.14, alterations to a heritage property, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement regarding 462 Eastern Avenue. This will be a matter that's going to be heard together with item number 20. So The item number 20 title is 462 Eastern Avenue, Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Amendment Application. There is a request for a directions report. There are speakers on that particular item, so I'm going to call your names and have you come forward.
It's not till 11 though, on 20.
Oh.
So we have to wait.
The clerks have just alerted me to that item number 20, which I just said should be heard with item number 14, is actually timed for 11 o'clock, so we cannot deal with that matter until then. So I'm going to hold, ask Councillor Fletcher, or I will hold down items number 14 and 20, and we will bring that back to the table for decision at 11 o'clock. This is a very unusually paced community council meeting. Okay, so TE 29.15, the area generally bounded by Bathurst Street, Blue Jays Way, Front Street West, and the Northern Linear Park, including 433 Front Street West. Official plan amendment application. This is a refusal report. There are members of the public registered to speak. I'd like to call Ira T. Kagan, and you are here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ira Kagan. I'm a municipal lawyer, and I'm here on behalf of Kraft Acquisitions, Inc. and Pitts Development, Inc. They're the purchasers of the air rights over this railway corridor. I want to state for the record, my clients have full control of the agreement of purchase and sale and intend to close the deal. I'm also here with the full knowledge and consent of the two registered owners of the property, Canadian National Railway Company and Toronto Terminal Railway Company Limited. And they actually sent a letter to this committee dated January the 15th, which is in your package, which is in support of the proposed development. Now, the registered owners recently tried to file a severance application with your Committee of Adjustment to sever the air rights that are on the east and west side of Blue Jays Way because they are serious about closing this transaction as well. Now, when CN and the TTR, those are the registered companies, when they sold the track level and the 27 feet above to create the air rights to Metrolinx in around the year 2000, they reserved on themselves these air rights on the clear understanding that they could be developed as specifically contemplated and allowed by your official plan. CN and TTR then sold those developable air rights to my clients who filed the applications which are before you today. Now, I've been practicing municipal law for nearly 30 years. I think I understand how things work. I've been following closely Councillor Cressy's comments in the press and at the public meetings, where he has been very clear from the very beginning that my client's proposed development is dead on arrival and will never be approved by the city. I was also at the public meeting at the hotel in the Rogers Centre when he spoke to the crowd and essentially apologized for what he described as wasting people's times for attending that meeting for a development which is going nowhere. And I also appreciate that the mayor has made the rail deck park a priority and is committed to it. So with these things in mind, it begs the question whether or not there's anything I could say today. Frankly, is there anything anyone could say today that would make a difference to this committee? So rather than deal with the specifics of the development and try in 5 minutes to challenge the over 100 pages of the staff report, I'm going to use my time to focus on the big picture items. I want to start by saying that my client's development application was not a reaction to the mayor's rail deck park announcement. My client actually made the first move. It purchased the air rights before Mayor Tory or Councillor Cressy were elected in 2014. It was in discussions with Metrolinx since that time to address all rail coordination matters. It met with city staff in August of 2015 to discuss the proposed development. It continued those meetings until July 2016, which predated the mayor's announcement in August. It's worth noting that in those meetings with city staff, prior to the mayor's announcement, that staff had asked my client not to apply for a private official plan amendment and instead work with staff on a city-initiated update of the in-force secondary plans. Needless to say, my client was not expecting the mayor's announcement later that summer. And as for the city's secondary plan review that staff wanted my client to work with them, well, late last year, staff brought forward to City Council OPA 395, which proposes to designate all of the air rights as park and open space. That would prevent any development whatsoever. My client spent a not small fortune in completing the myriad of studies which the city requires for a complete application. These are air rights. These air rights are in an area identified by the city's OP as a future development area, what the city's OP calls overbuild. In the face of all of this, staff have recommended a complete refusal of my client's application and gave a long list of reasons. And some of them, and I only want to touch on a couple, I found very curious. They say, for example, that this proposed mixed-use development, which preserves more than half of the site for park and open space, which contains residential and non-residential uses, they say that that development is not compliant with the PPS and not compliant with the growth plan. Now, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, who's in charge of those documents, they wrote a letter of comment to the city. They never suggested any such thing. My question is, how can that not comply with the PPS and the growth plan, but the city's plan to turn the entire 21 acres into a park, a single use, that would comply? Frankly, it just doesn't make any sense. Your Parks Department also takes issue with the over 50% my client is proposing to preserve for parkland, quoting that there are access issues, grade issues, etc. Well, the city has to build the very same deck and is going to have the very same issues. So if there are issues for my client, there are issues for the city, but they weren't raised in any of the reports supporting OPA 395.
Sorry, Ira, to interrupt. Your time is up. Can I get your final thoughts, please?
Sure. I'd like to read only one section of the city's OP to see what the problem is. The city's existing in-force OP, policy 4.3.7 says, parks and open space areas that are privately owned are not necessarily open to the general public nor intended to be purchased by the city. But if an application is made to develop those lands and the city does not wish to purchase them, then the application will be considered on the basis of the existing OP.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Yeah, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, sir, for coming here today. Just a couple brief questions. Does the application that's in include development on or the utilization of the North Linear Park lands?
Yes.
Does the City of Toronto own those lands?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the application include development over the area of the Puente de Luz Bridge, the yellow bridge that crosses north-south?
I believe it does.
Does the City of Toronto own those air rights?
I'm not sure, but I know my client does not.
Okay, so the City of Toronto does. So just to be clear, this development proposes to build on city-owned land. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the speaker from members? Okay, thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Hamish Wilson. Hamish, welcome.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. With some larger reservations and some proposition, I'm fairly supportive of your moves to reject the proposed buildings over the railway yards for many of the reasons given. But to be fair, however, most everything beyond the existing limits and plans in the area of the secondary plan, where did I get my image of that? We almost should be getting a development freeze, quite honestly, for this area through here. To be fair, we're so overloaded in the core, with our transit especially, and the lack of good transit and fast transit from the pinch point into the core. To be fair, I think we should cap what we're trying to do in this city to what is approved and what the zoning actually allows. And in this area in particular here highlighted, that should have a hard freeze right now. I would, because we've had plans going over the years for better transit, and we're just having overload after overload, only more buildings here approved, and we have to have better transit. The Toronto, this council here is actually one of the better places and the more caring places in the city to appear. A very significant salient vote, I think, was about a year ago when 10 of your members agreed to use rational considerations to approve infrastructure. I think that's a hallmark of the sensibility of this committee, so well done. Caring for the future, caring for taxpayers. We are beset with many issues and problems that are increasingly worsened by having the majority of the council voting against the core, and the amalgamation ain't working, and we not only need a development freeze going well beyond the railway lands, but almost a divorce. Yes, this gets political beyond merely this council, or council, as the Scarborough sub-ring has inspired, and deservedly so, up to the province. The Only More Buildings Board, we've allowed constant overbuild. And it's such a problem. We've got to send a message up to the council, up to the province, hey, we've got some problems. We've got to start doing sensible transit in sensible places, which is the core. And this is one example that touches on the railway lands, the downtown relief west end especially, because I think we need Bloor, King, Queen, Gardner, Go, Lakeshore relief. In some ways, it's regrettable that it has to be focused on this particular site and issue, as the railways have certainly provided a great deal of help to the city and can continue to do so with usage of the GO. It is, however, notable that there's a major compromising of an early attempt at public interest planning, as everything south of Front Street was supposed to be held and used for public waterfront park. I do have an image from the very early days of the city. Where is it here? I'm sorry, I'm a little less together. We have everything south of Front Street really was supposed to be used for a public park. And that's important because something happened. We obviously had the need for the railways to bring in the materials for our buildings and for our food and supplies. But you can't help think that with all the massive amount of buildings south of the original Front Street, that in fact we've been shortchanged over the decades, and it really is a problem. Oh gosh, I wish I could show this to you. I think I've shown it to you somewhere else. There we are, finally. An early map there. I've enlarged it, reserved for a public pleasure ground, otherwise known as a park. So there's been a massive expansion over the century of the waterfront, and we don't, yes, we've got harborfront, but yes, we need something that's a bit more spacious. Even though if we had the Toronto Island Ferry as a free thing, we could start to include that park as an accessible thing. If we had better transit or better bikeways out to the X grounds and weren't having issues of suburban domination there too, then maybe we'd have more park there and less asphalt and greater year-round public use as well. I think what we need to do is keep on working. Like, the reason for my concern here is that we really have to have this better transit. And as you know, over the years and decades, I've been a bit propositional. This is what I'm thinking of now, more than anything else, doing a one-way reversible transit way from the pinch point here at High Park, but crossing over the railways here. We need to have their cooperation. And quite honestly, I think there's a massive amount of opportunity further west in this area of Parkdale for building over the railway lands. And that's a good thing about all of this, is both the city and the developers agree that it's possible to build over the railway land. So I would suggest that somehow we manage to try and keep on working to massage this to get some sense of both better housing here and open space, but also especially out here in the Parkdale area to both improve housing and improve the transit, because we're building over these opportunities and we are so desperately needing improved transit. There's a lot of hypocrisy with the use of the Places to Grow Act, by the way, as a reason for dismissal here, because quite honestly, I don't think it's observed here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. Our next speaker is Lua Buni. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning and thanks. I'm Louis Bunny, an architect, designer, and researcher in the symbolism of architecture, urban design, and theories of design, with many hopes that the development will take place one day. This presentation focuses on the possibilities of achieving a symbolic Canadian Torontonian identity for the railway lands development project. Most of the modern cities in the world have turned to open, universal, and undefined spaces with streets and streets just to move and move, rather than defined urban places to let people gather, meet, and create different levels of interaction. People need central urban spaces to meet rather than corridors and undefined universal spaces and parks. And this matter requires creating a central urban space with the railway corridor like an open heart for the whole area to unite all the streets and links around it. This heart can be shaped by architectural or landscape boundaries like a modern forum or agora where people can gather, meet, and celebrate, a symbol of unity that can express a variety within a oneness, like a diversity within a unity that speaks about the Canadian unity too. This heart is to be clearly opened to the city around it to let the city breathe properly by composing the boundaries to unite and shape gates and arcades, for example, to let this heart interrelate with the whole city around. Also, another matter, Lake Ontario can have a beautiful symbolic presence in this, I repeat, symbolic presence in this project. It's an incredible source of inspiration and romance for Toronto. Many times I dream of the possibility of symbolically or actually inviting the lake to the heart of the city and to the other places to create beautiful and romantic urban inside or insides to start a nice dialogue between the city and the lake and to let water move and bring romance and pleasure everywhere within any affordable possibilities. Water can unite the city and shape a uniqueness in Toronto that can make the city different than all these other cities of the world. And this, just a vision, in this project, for example, we can imagine the trains moving under a glazed ceiling that is covered by a flow of water. This is just an example to make things more clear. Also, we might imagine a mountain of symbolic mirror and glass glittery snowflakes which shape a waterfall near Bathurst, for example, like a symbolic gate that welcomes the lake to enter the site symbolically. I also love to imagine glittery snowflakes of mirror and glass like crystals everywhere, fountains and waterfalls composed by those mirror and glass snowflakes like a source of water with incredible reflections of light. Beautiful space boundaries of crystal snowflakes can shape the urban and landscape spaces, feeding water pools, streams, and all the other areas covered by water. This symbolic presence expresses respecting the severe natural and environmental conditions in Canada, like the freezing winter, to make those extreme natural conditions a positive part in expressing a beauty in Canada rather than representing a problem to be solved. An iconic presence of life can be expressed, for example, by crystal maple leaves as a symbol of life to start a dialogue with the crystal snowflakes, which represent the source of water that gives life. One of the most beautiful symbols that speaks about a uniqueness in Canada is the symbol that expresses Canada as the country of new beginnings. The glory of life that can be composed in the relationship between the inside and the outside, when a strong inside supports a broken outside, like a resurrection after a cross of brokenness, difficulties, challenges, and pains. A theme which I used to call the unbroken broken. Thank you. I'm just giving examples to a vision that the public might believe that it will happen one day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none, with our thanks. Our next speaker is Max Allen. Max, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here for the Grange Community Association. We have a letter in your file, and I have no further oral presentation.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you very much, Max. Short and sweet, and always succinct to the point. Any questions of Max? No? Seeing none? Are there any? No, Max, you can sit. Thank you. Are there any other members who are interested in speaking to this item? Members of the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring this inside. Members with questions of staff. Councillor Troisi.
Yeah, I just have a technical question. for our planners. Is the City of Toronto complying with its own official plan and bylaw if in fact the City of Toronto denies the development and proceeds with the rail deck park?
Through you, Madam Chair, the in force policies for the railway lands require that a full review be done of all land uses for any of the rail corridor lands in the railway lands, and so we have done that full review. The official plan also states that for lands which are designated utility corridors, that we will give priority to parkland for any change to utility corridors. So we've done a full analysis of all the policies, and we are in compliance with the direction of those policies.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cressy.
I guess a technical question. Are applicants, do they have the right to propose to build and rezone land which is under the city's control?
Through you, Madam Chair, for an official plan amendment, any member of the public has the right to apply to redesignate any land, whether it's owned by the city or whether it's owned by another private owner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members with questions to staff? No? Okay. Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair, and I don't believe I'll use my full 5 minutes. In my 3 years here at City Hall, I've been on the receiving end of many rather ridiculous proposals. Until this project, the most ridiculous had been the proposal to have a floating parking lot placed on the lake near Bathurst Quay. That is nothing compared to what we see in front of us today. In a city where we are seeking to improve the livability of downtown, in an area that has doubled in growth in the last 15 years and will double again in the next 25 years, this does not contribute to livability. In a city where we are trying to increase access to the waterfront, the construction of a wall of towers does not improve access. This proposal in front of us is for 8 buildings ranging in heights from 27 to 59 stories, along with a 4-story retail building as well. It is proposed to be built partially on city-owned land and using city-owned airspace. It is proposed to be accessed in part through private streets with an elevated parking lot rising above. It contravenes every conceivable policy that exists, from the provincial policy statement to the official plan to all the relevant secondary plans. I have never in my 3 years here seen an applicant do such a show-and-tell job as this. From radio advertisements to TV advertisements. They have used every gimmick available to try to convince the City of Toronto to make a bad decision. We will not fall for it. Our professional city staff have reviewed this application, and in a 102-page refusal report, they have outlined on every single level, using every single policy that applies, that this is a very, very, very bad project. As you've heard, applicants certainly have the right to propose ridiculous projects, including those on city-owned land. But we, as city councillors, have an obligation to stop them when they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Any other members with comments? Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to add, you know, our passion and drive for more green space, especially in downtown Toronto, where we are parkland deprived, and all the health benefits associated with nature. And most cities, including Toronto, are working towards having some sort of green space parkette within 5 to 10 minutes of walking distance from people's homes, from their businesses, and this is the last possible chance for a park in downtown Toronto. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other members? Okay, although there's the recommendations from the staff put before us, moved by Councillor Cressy. All those in favour?
I ask for a recorded vote, please.
Yes, of course. Request for a recorded vote. Councillor Davis, Councillor Cressy, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Perks, Councillor Troisi, Councillor Mallow, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Bailao. Okay, let the record show that that vote was unanimous. The next item before us is TE 20. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back to. Hang on tight before you do that. I did promise that we were going to head back to items TE 29.14 and .20, which were going to be held and dealt with together. So the alteration, I'm just going to read the title just for those who are out of the room. The matter is alterations to a heritage property but then Councillor Fletcher's not here. Okay, so I'm going to go back and Councillor Bailao is here, Councillor Perks is here. We'll get some of their business dealt with. Councillor Bailao, this is TE 29.5, 26 Ernest Avenue, City initiated zoning amendment final report. This is a 10 o'clock item. Are there any members of the public here to speak to it? Seeing none, any members with questions to staff? Seeing none, Councillor Bailao.
Move staff recommendations. This is just to correct some overlooked issues that didn't come out properly in the bylaw. So the staff has been working with the developer to make sure that we clean up the bylaw, and that's why it's here in front of us. So it's technical, minimal stuff that staff asked and initiated to get it done, and it's here. So I ask for your support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else to speak? Okay, motion is before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Councillor Perks, there's a few items for you.
Yes, if we could deal with 11 and 17 together, they speak to the same property.
Okay, sure. I think there are speakers registered for number 11. Let me just call this out again. T 29.11, alterations to a designated heritage property, 421 Roncesvalles Avenue. Jack Gibney. Yes? Okay, you already spoke. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Any members with questions to staff? Don't see any. Members to speak. Councillor Perks?
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation to refuse the alterations to the property.
That's what we have to say.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We are now heading to...
We can do 17, it's the same property, yeah.
T 29.17, 421 Roncesvalles Avenue, zoning amendment application request for directions report. It's an item that's tied together. Any members of the public here to speak to that? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Don't see any. Members to speak. Councillor Perks?
I'll move the staff recommendations in the request for direction report.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. We are now T 29.16, 33 and 37 Parliament Street official plan and zoning amendment application. It's a refusal report. There is one registered speaker, Julie Bedos. Are you here? Hi, Julie. Welcome. The clock is on your left-hand side. You know you have 5 minutes. If there are any other members of the public here to speak to that matter, please register with the clerk. When you're ready, I'll start your clock.
Good morning, and thanks for hearing me. This is a very small site, less than an acre, and it's fought over like the field at Waterloo. And I want to start by thanking staff for their professionalism and courtesy and the thoughtful and patient and considerate way they've handled all the parties to the discussion. You have letters from both the president of our neighborhood association and one of the condo boards supporting the recommendations in the staff report. I just want to mention one item in the staff report, which is the reference to the official plan amendment, which Council approved last summer. The OPA offers an opportunity to the owners of site at 31 Parliament and this site to work together and build something that would have the full support of the city and the neighbours. And they're seeming not to want to do that, and we think that's a great shame. This issue could be resolved if those two landowners would work together. So I ask you, on behalf of our neighbourhood, to adopt the recommendations of the staff report. The distillery site is a very special place in the city, and it would be besides all of the inconveniences of having so much crammed into one little tiny corner, there's the issue of what we would lose if we allowed this very special place to turn into just another forest of new towers that all look alike. There's more at stake than how difficult it is already for me to get to my front door. So I ask you to accept the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We do have another speaker, Cynthia McDougall. Okay. Welcome, Cynthia. Good morning.
Well, it's probably inappropriate to start this way, but I must say some of my friends in the bar and I, when we heard Mr. Kagan say he's been at this business for 30 years, so he knows how things work, so I was thinking of congratulating him because I've been at this business for over 30 years and I'm still not sure how it works. And in that regard, my name's Cynthia McDougall. I'm here on behalf of the Greywood Partnership, which is an entity that, in fact, has a good working relationship with the city. And I have before us a refusal report, which isn't an enviable situation, and I'm not seeking to change the recommendation because I don't think that will occur. However, I publicly wanted to come out and say that we're continuing to work with staff, and we'd encourage staff to work with us, and that it shouldn't be a case of a race to the swiftest. And I heard the lady speak before us from the Residents Association indicating that the staff have indicated that there should be one tower, and we're in a situation where, in fact, if I can just put up on the board, my client's application is for a tower of 39 stories, and our neighbor has an application to the south of 49 stories. And the policies that were passed by the city, an official plan amendment, suggests there should be one tower. And so my comments are there shouldn't be a race to the swiftest. We should be working together to see if we can sort things out and resolve things rather than slugging it out in the usual fashion. But whether that'll happen or not, I'm not sure, but I know that the city staff, if they work with us, we may be able to end up with a result that serves the public interest and the private interest as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Are there any other members of the public who are here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Members, do any of you have questions of staff? Don't see any members to speak. Councillor Troisi.
I move approval of staff recommendations to refuse the application. This site is adjacent to the distillery district in what is called the Triangle Lands. Over the past 15 years, the distillery has been revitalized and has become one of Toronto's most attractive destinations. It also has become a neighborhood for many new residents. The original planning for the distillery district combined residential development with conditions that invested in the restoration of historical buildings and supported the creative industries through partnerships with Artscape and the Young Centre. It has created a success and dynamic community. Development applications are now coming forward around the distillery district footprint and need to be managed carefully. The city approved planning policy for the Triangle Lands last year to guide this development. It recommended certain built form parameters and a maximum of 2 towers. Between one approved tower and 2 applications, we now have 3 towers in the picture. This application, as it stands, does not meet the intent of this policy and impacts both the distillery district and St. Lawrence neighborhood. More needs to be done to get the right solution for the site, and I will encourage staff and the applicants to work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. The recommendations are before you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. T 29.18, 122, 124, 126, and 128 Peter Street, and 357 and 359 Richmond Street West. Zoning bylaw amendment application. Request for directions report. There is a registered speaker. Max Allen, you are still here. I see you. I would invite you to come and speak to this matter. And if there's any other members of the public who are here to speak to this item, please register with the clerk. Max, long time no see. Welcome back. Okay.
Proponent first, but apparently you're going to hear from the proponent second. I'm Max Allen from the Grange Community Association. The problem of what to do with multiple applications in a small area is one that occurs all over the place. You just heard one, and there have been others, and I'm going to refer to it. The Grange Community Association has watched the evolution of this proposal and the rocky discussions about the spar block around it as a whole, with a combination of delight and dismay. As the staff report notes, the corner lot proposal now is much better than it was originally. The sidewalk width and the historic building issues are solvable, it seems to me, and we hope that the OMB mediation will succeed. This block cries out for something like a block plan. There is, I think, universal agreement that the center of the block could and should be a public landscaped open space, in other words, a park. Getting there has proven to be enormously difficult, not least because of the challenge of servicing the perimeter buildings. But in an OMB settlement just last week on Widmer Street that was led, I would say, by Ms. McDougall, who you just heard from, an arrangement for servicing two big tower buildings in a kind of private enterprise block plan was devised that might be a model for the two active proposals here. And so we urge the city and the developers and the other owners around the spar block to keep trying.
Thank you, Max.
So keep trying.
Okay. Thank you, Max, for your remarks. Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Artenozzi. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of Community Council, I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Fortress Carlisle, and I'm really here just to acknowledge that we've reviewed the staff report. It was provided to us relatively recently. And I do want to start off by acknowledging and thanking staff for the very detailed review in a relatively quick turnaround. The issues identified in the report are under review as we speak by our consultants. And I want to confirm that our client remains committed to an open and ongoing working relationship with staff. And I expect that that will be a highly iterative process. As Mr. Allen's identified, there is a mediation that's coming up in February, and we're looking towards that as being an opportunity for a roundtable discussion, not only with staff, but other interested parties. So that really is the purpose of my deputation today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Daniel, for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, okay. Are there any other members of the public here for this matter, this item? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'll be moving the staff recommendations, which are in the supplementary report. And I just draw our attention to two things. One, that is, as part of staff's attendance at the board and mediation, there are obviously issues related to planning concerns that have been identified. And then another, which is identified both in the recommendations and in the body of the report, which was spoken to by one of the deputants here, which is the principle of looking at this not on its own, but as part of a block plan related to the opportunity for parks and or public space in the interior, as well as the considerations of how do we make loading work for all involved in order to allow ourselves of that land. So with that said, as a preamble, I'm happy to move the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Any other speakers? The recommendations are before you, councillors. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.19, 773, Yonge Street Zoning Amendment Application Request for Directions Report. We have one speaker, Chris Barnett, DLA Piper Canada. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Community Council. I'm here today on behalf of Brookfield Property Partners LP, which owns, leases, or manages the majority of the block of land located at the northeast corner of Bloor and Yonge. Through a related company, Brookfield also owns the property that is immediately adjacent to the subject property on the south, and that's 765 Yonge Street. My clients are opposed to this proposal and therefore disagree with the staff recommendation. It's our client's position that this application represents an effort to put a tall building on a site that is frankly too small to accommodate it. That position is supported by the city's own tall building design guidelines and the council's adoption of those guidelines in OPA 352 and the decision to enshrine the side yard setbacks and the tall building setbacks into zoning bylaw 1107. We've asked our urban designer, Robert Friedman, who you may know was involved in the drafting of the tall building design guidelines, to do a graphic representation of what an application of the tall building setbacks and the small site test in those guidelines to this property would be. And the hard copy that you'll have received shows a little bit better than this, but you can see that the application of the small site test in the blue, surrounded by what's being proposed, I think clearly demonstrates that although you've got a property here that is at Bloor and Yonge, and intuitively you might think is a location where there should be greater height and density, it's on a property that is frankly too small to accommodate it. This is an application that's at one of the most significant intersections in the city. And I'd ask you to look beyond just this application and think about the implications of how staff are interpreting the guidelines and policy regarding building setbacks. The city spent an enormous amount of time and resources studying, thinking about, and coming up with a process to deal with tall buildings and at what the city should be doing as it starts to grow and continues to grow vertically. And that resulted in the tall building design guidelines, and they really are at the leading edge of urban design standards in cities of the size and importance of the City of Toronto. And the gist of it comes down to you don't want to create a circumstance where you've got tall buildings that are really cheek by jowl with one another. This was an important enough issue as part of the TO core process led to council taking the standards that my client is concerned with, the tall building setbacks, and incorporating them as a zoning bylaw standard, the 12.5 meter setback. Lots of landowners disagreed with that standard. There are hundreds of appeals of that currently before the Ontario Municipal Board. And I have to say, having taken the decision at this community council and as council as a whole that this standard is important enough to enshrine in a zoning bylaw, it's important not to undercut it. And in this case, you've got a tall building that is set back 1 meter from the property my client owns at 765 Yonge Street, and is set back between 11 and 12.5 meters from my client's office building at 2 Bloor Street East. And the majority, in fact, almost all of that setback is in fact on property that is owned or controlled by my client. The concern is not just about urban design, though. It's also about the effect of having a building close to one of the city's premier office towers at 2 Bloor Street East. This was important enough, and I'd ask you to recall that this building contains close to 2,000 high-quality office jobs, the sort of jobs that the city wants to encourage and wants to ensure that you've got an office environment that is desirable. And this was important enough for your economic development department to express a concern in a memo that I've attached to my letter about this, setting out their concern about the potential effect of having a tall building so close to this premier office tower, and I'd ask you to consider that. Now, I understand from the staff report that the proposal is to have no buildings, no windows on the south side of the building, which might address some of the privacy concerns that my client has on behalf of their tenants in the office tower. If you go back and look at the staff report that supported OPA 352 and the zoning bylaw 1107, which put these tall building stepbacks into the OPA, they note that having a blank wall and having no windows on the south side might in fact address privacy concerns. But if you do that, you're in fact creating a really bad urban design issue. And so if you have to solve one problem by creating another, I guess you have to ask yourself, and I'd urge you to ask yourself, should we be varying from these standards, solving one problem and creating another?
If I can get your final remarks.
My final remark would be simply that my client is fundamentally opposed to the proposal as it is before you. This is a tall building on a site that simply isn't big enough to accommodate it, and I'd urge you to, unfortunately, disagree with your staff recommendation and join my client in opposing this proposal at the Ontario Municipal Board. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any members with questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none. Our next speaker is, thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Isaac Tang. Isaac, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you have in front of you a letter from my firm. It's January 15th. It was just yesterday, sent shortly before noon. My name is Isaac Tang. I represent Bell Canada with respect to the application that is subject to this discussion today. For context, Bell Canada owns the site immediately east of the proposed development. It runs its third largest data and communication center in Toronto from that site. It's been on that site since the 1920s. So the proposal to locate a 25-story tower with 136 residences is only 2.8 meters away from our shared setback line, with windows and balconies facing our client's property, is a concern. And our concern is that it will undermine Bell's ability to operate this incredibly important facility without incurring significant financial and operational costs. And so there are just three reasons that I want to highlight for your consideration, and they're set out in our letter, but the most important one deals with something that's not addressed by the applicant and something that's not addressed in the staff report, and that's emissions and air quality. And the reason for this is because due to the importance of this Bell facility, we have to be prepared for power outages. Now, you may remember there was a power outage that affected most of the East End just a week ago, and it's important for these data communication centers to continue running in the event of power outage. So we have 3 large generators located within the Bell building. Now, these generators emit contaminants that are recognized by the Environmental Protection Act, and most notably nitrogen oxides. During its testing cycle, it's tested every month because it's important for this facility to keep running if there's a power outage, just like the one that happened not too long ago. And so what the Mankey's proposal does is introduce new sensitive receptors just mere meters away from our building. And there has been no emissions or air quality report submitted by the applicant. And because of this, city staff never had the opportunity to review whether or not this proposal will introduce essentially negative impacts to new residences that are being proposed for the site. And I see that the speaker before me had identified what it looks like from their perspective, and this is what the proposal looks like from my client's perspective. So you can see that the east elevation, this is facing the Bell property, there's a number of balconies, there's a number of windows that are operable that are essentially not there now. And when we're doing these testing operations every month, there will be contaminants, and they're not being addressed by this proposal. So our first concern is that staff just simply doesn't have the information it has before it to direct or to recommend that City Council direct its legal solicitor to act and attend in support of this development application. This key issue has not been addressed. Now, our letter also raises 2 other issues, one that has been covered by the speaker before me, which is setback distances. The staff report mentioned to deal with the setback to the south, we'll have no windows. To deal with the setback from Yonge Street, we'll keep the 10 meters, even though 20 meters was recommended. It is silent on why staff is accepting a 2.8 meter setback as opposed to the recommended 12.5 meters under the city's tall building guidelines. And because my client's building is located immediately essentially adjacent to the property line, we are talking about tower separation that is, less than 5 meters. And this simply compounds the emissions and air quality concerns that my client has. And the final concern I'd raise is one that hasn't been discussed, which is the shared laneway that provides the only source of vehicular access to the proposed development. Now, that shared laneway is under a number of easements with obligations and legal rights and restrictions on the part of both Menkes, of my client Bell Canada, and of Brookfield. And these legal issues have not been addressed in the staff report. They essentially say, well, we've taken a look at the proposal, and it looks like the turning radiuses, and we can park a truck there and it's fine. But they haven't addressed whether or not that's even legally permissible at this point. So I think there are 3 key concerns that need to be considered by Community Council before this application can be supported by the city at the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any members with questions to the speaker? Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public here to speak? Adam Brown, I see you.
Sure.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I will address the issues last that were raised, but first tell you about the recommendations before you in a settlement that's gone a long way towards addressing what was at first an application that city staff had concerns about. So the site is just north of the intersection of Yonge and Bloor that I've highlighted on the map. It's in an area that's designated downtown and central waterfront under the urban structure section and mixed use of the official plan. And it's in an area where this council is aware of many of the heights ranging from 34 to 82 stories, many of them 30-plus stories. And this proposal at the outset, and I'll show you in a minute, which is at 25 stories, was reduced from 166 meters to 81.7, and has an as-of-right height limit with 0 meter setbacks depending on window locations. And that has to be recognized when people submit plans to you saying, oh, this is what would be done with the guidelines. As of right, decade-old zoning allows a 61-meter high building. We're about 20 meters higher. It's for certain the lowest additional height or density I've ever sought on any application in this area, or for that matter in the city. So I know. So it's pretty low in terms of height and density. Some of the changes that occurred in the proposal was a request to relocate on Asquith our residential lobby to make sure we had a proper retail frontage on Yonge Street. One of the other approvals that's before you is the heritage preservation of the building on Yonge Street, which we've complied with and agreed to. And in addition, I thought it was interesting to say from the last speaker, oh, there's a legal issue. There's no legal issue. We're not parking on the laneway. In fact, the city asked us to convey lands to widen it. We're widening it. There's no legal issue about the laneway use. And we only have 22 cars that would be accessing our site, and our loading, as you can see, is on our site. It's not in the laneway. This is a elevation of, again, Ralph Giannone, who was brought in after as a second architect to completely redesign and respond to city staff's concern. That's our building. Again, that's the proposal, an elegantly designed building. The density's been reduced, the height's been reduced, the unit count from 257 to 136, density from 19.9 to 14.27, and the reconfiguration of the ground floor. That's the original proposal outlined in red. That's the proposal before the board today. So when people talk about the setbacks being deficient, without windows, you have 0 meter setbacks permitted. With windows, there's undulation in Mr. Giannone's design, which is elegant on all sides, including that which faces the office, and I think this council is well aware you don't have a right to a view through another property. This is the at-grade treatment in terms of the heritage building and the treatment of the buildings as it comes around Asquith, and then other elevations showing you the elegance of the design that's being recommended to you today. So let me address a couple of issues. I think I've addressed the issue of no legal right to a view and the fact that there's 11 meter separation distance between that building and this site, and privacy has been addressed by having an elegant design facing south, but no operable windows or views that are creating any privacy issues. In terms of Bell, listen to what they're saying. We haven't done a study to address Bell's contaminants from their building. And I said to my friends when they were raising this, if you're going to raise it in the public, then let me give you the answer. Bell currently has issues with air emissions based on discussions that have had with our own consultants. They asked us to look at it, and we did. They are adjacent to receptors that are elevated in the Marriott Hotel. They need to address it now. So for them to come here and say we should be looking at it, no, we shouldn't. It's not our building. It's not our, as he says, contaminants. Their contaminants now are an issue based on the consultation that's been done with our own experts. They have to address that for the Marriott Hotel that has intake vents. Once they've addressed it, there's no longer an issue. And the second point is, I'm zoned for residential today. So to say that, oh, I guess from the 61 stories to the 81 stories, 81 meters, 61 meters to 81 meters is all of a sudden an issue for contaminants from their building, they have the responsibility, not my client. So when they say it, I'm, to be quite honest, amazed that they make the comment that we ought to fix their contamination that they're saying they're emitting into the air. They said it, not me. And those are my submissions. There's also been settlement on the Section 37 contributions, and I want to thank staff and the local councillor and the community who's been involved in a process for a while to reach a resolution, and my client has listened and made significant changes to developments and revisions to get here today with a positive report from staff and heritage staff and planning, urban design, and all other staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Okay. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this item? Residents associations? No. Okay, thank you. Members with questions to staff? Seeing none, I actually have a couple of questions just to clarify the comments from the speakers who appeared before us. With respect to the claims around air quality, this is not necessarily something that was discussed at any particular public meeting. I'm hearing this, I believe, I think it's the first time. Can you speak to the comments raised by the representative on behalf of Bell Canada?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, this is a recent issue that we've heard at the board last week, and I believe it's a result of some recent tests done by Bell Canada on their generators. And as they state in their letter, which I will turn to, they say that during this test period, contaminants recognized by the Environmental Protection Act, such as nitrogen oxides, are released into the atmosphere. So there are generators on top of buildings everywhere in the city. If they find that they're emitting a pollutant, I believe that's a matter for them to rectify. I mean, I do have an aerial photograph here of the area which can identify where these generators are, and you will notice that there are 3 residential buildings in and around the site today. And as the applicant spoke, there is permission to build residential on the site. This is not an industrial area. This is a mixed-use area right at Yonge and Bloor, and there are office, commercial, and residential uses in and around this vicinity. So it's not a matter of conducting a planning study to see how a residential building up against an industrial zone would respond.
And is it a general practice that the city planning department asks the applicant for a air quality test?
No, it's not. Not in this circumstance.
And is it required in this circumstances given the claims by one of the appellants?
It is. In this case, being a mixed-use area, we would not ask for that test.
With respect to the concerns around tower separation for both Bell, for the adjacent neighbors, can you, and considering the comments from Adam Brown regarding the as-of-right height, the proposal as it came in and where we are today, can you outline for members of Community Council the as-of-right height, what was permitted, what the changes have been through the planning process, and how it is that you have now come to a conclusion that this is an agreeable settlement that you should take?
Right. So first thing, as the applicant mentioned, there was a dramatic reduction in height. The height was reduced in half from 166 meters to 81.7. And I guess I'll summarize in 5 points. Number one, This proposal is 16 meters above the as-of-right height. So the as-of-right height is 61 meters plus 5-meter mechanical, that's 66 meters. This proposal is 81.7 meters, including its mechanical penthouse. So that's the first point. The second point I would mention is that because there is a blank wall on the south facade, the building would be permitted to be built up against the property line, so zero setback. In this case, the applicant's providing an additional setback of a meter and or up to 2.5 meters. As well, it's been mentioned about the tall building separation guidelines, and staff did look at that, of course, as well as there's a community-led guideline that is now in circulation and under review in the community, and that recommends a 15-meter tower separation distance in this circumstance, and that is a very current document done by consultants. The next point I will raise is that above and beyond the as-of-right, this site, this proposal contemplates the conservation of a 3-story heritage building in its entirety. The full volume of this heritage building is being secured, and the tower is being set back between 8.2 and 10 meters from Yonge Street. Again, a much improvement from the as-of-right permissions on the site. And fourth, I will mention that this tower is not only much shorter than the office building to its south, but is offset from that office building. So it would also open up additional views to the north from the corner offices of that building. And the fifth point I'll raise is that when you look at the Yonge and Bloor area, the Bloor corridor, there are many circumstances where you have office buildings either right up against residential buildings or with a very narrow separation distance between the two. And that's why you have the studies done at Bloor Yorkville that respond to that, saying this is the existing condition and character of this canyon corridor, and that's why we find that this proposal fits in with its context and is only minimally above the as-of-right height permission.
Thank you. And with respect to most settlement offers on the table, they generally have time limitations to them. And so the recommendations from staff today is obviously with one eye looking at the time limitations to that settlement offer. Is that correct?
That is correct. We've already gone past that deadline once. And the board, we did have a pre-hearing last week. We have another one in a day or so, or a week after City Council meets. So the board is expecting to hear issues list from all parties, including Bell Canada, have agreed that they will be prepared to provide their issues at that pre-hearing.
Yeah. Is there any benefit to this body to refer this matter back to staff for additional negotiations with the applicant and the appellants? Have we exhausted those negotiations at this point? Is it a matter of just moving forward to the board? Is it a matter of that we have to adopt the settlement report?
City planning staff aren't looking for further issues to resolve.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Perks? Oh, okay. Councillor Davis, questions?
I wanted you to clarify your comment, which I didn't hear very clearly, about a new set of guidelines with 15-meter setbacks.
Yes.
So that it's currently being used. Was this recent?
So I will clarify for you through the chair. There is an existing local urban design guideline for this area.
Okay.
From 2004. And in those guidelines, it speaks to a 15-meter tower separation distance within this area. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a more current framework which is being proposed by the residents associations and the BIA for this area. That is under review. So that's the most current document we're looking at. And in that document, it also recommends a 15-meter tower separation distance in this area. And as proposed, we're looking at a tower separation, excuse me, of
5 meters.
No, the tower separation is far greater than 5 meters. It is 11 to 12.5 meter tower separation distance. So just under the 15 meters as recommended, most recently by the community.
I also heard for the first time you use an expression I hadn't heard before, a canyon character.
Yes.
This is the character that we are seeking to achieve?
Along the Bloor corridor, yes, that is the character we're seeking to achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perks, questions?
I don't have questions. I just want to speak to one of the issues that was raised.
Are there any other members with questions for staff? Okay, seeing none. I know Councillor Perks would like to speak. I'm interested in speaking. What I'd like to do is acknowledge Councillor Perks first.
Yeah, okay. So I want to speak a little bit to this issue of sensitive receptors and pollutants. It's absolutely true that there's an issue generally when pollutants are emitted into the air and how close someone is to it. That's in the case of when there's a compound that's directly toxic. And the Ministry of Environment and we as a city it's important that we keep our eye on that. But it's also important that we understand how different pollutants work. Oxides of nitrogen are not in themselves something that's going to make you sick if you're near them. What they are is a precursor to photochemical smog. So the oxides of nitrogen are emitted into the air. They sit there, they react with ammonium and other compounds in the air, and over the course of several days, they become precursors to things like ozone through photochemical reactions, which then create smog. Usually that process takes 2 to 3 days. So in fact, the oxides of nitrogen typically emitted in downtown Toronto cause photochemical smog in places like Brampton, depending on where the prevailing wind is. It's not a toxic issue which is related to the immediate proximity. It's a chemical reaction that takes days to take place in order for the smog to become a problem. So the Ministry of Environment regulations, which would look at a toxin, say a chlorinated organic compound, which would be directly and acutely toxic to someone nearby, would pertain in that instance, but not in this one. So the issue about sensitive receptors simply doesn't matter here. Bet you didn't know I used to teach environmental studies. So we do now. You do now. So I'm not concerned about that issue that's been raised. I want to applaud city staff on the hard work they've done taking what was a very difficult application and making it much better.
Madam Speaker, I was going to deliver verbatim the exact speech, but I'm not. I'm going to choose not to speak now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perks. I'm actually speaking now. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Perks. Always good to have a resident expert on the environmental issues on Community Council. I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report and just to advance the settlement to City Council. And also just to recognize the members of the communities who are not here today. They're not here largely for a reason. When the application was first tabled, I would say that if that was the application before us now, moving ahead, this room would pretty much be filled, and the community of Yorkville would not have been pleasant to deal with. And they generally are. They generally are very, very smart and very sophisticated with respect to land use planning and development. They generally know when to fight and when to retreat and when to settle. So just by way of them not being here, I just want to point out it has a lot to do with the fact that there is active eyes on the file, but also recognizing that they understood that city planning has done everything that they can to make lemonade out of a very patch of lemons, if I can say. The as-of-right zoning on this property is very difficult, and it creates much harsher urban conditions than the revised application today. And this is a neighborhood that has seen extraordinary growth and density, but it's also a neighborhood that is actually going to be receiving some of the most architecturally interesting and forward-thinking designs of buildings anywhere in the country, I believe. And so I want to thank the applicant, not for your first original application, but certainly for the resubmissions and now the settlement offer. I want to thank Councillor Perks, actually, for illuminating what was going to be a very befogging issue for me, which is now no longer a consideration. Smoggy issue. I think what would be important for us to note is that there are discussions around planning, especially for an urban context that is already very dense and built up, that has context within an existing streetscape. This is not a blank canvas. Any application coming in has to respond to the neighborhood issues. It has to respond to a number of planning criteria that are set forth by the city, that are set forth by the province, this is oftentimes a very messy conversation, but what I believe we have here is an outcome that we can certainly live with. And actually, out of the settlement offers that we have negotiated in the past, I would say this is one that we can embrace with more enthusiasm, simply because it does meet a number of the other criteria, including heritage retention in whole and in its entirety, and that is very significant considering this is a contiguous portion to the new Yonge Street Heritage Conservation District. And so with that, I'd like to just thank everyone for their participation, including the neighbors who I know are not satisfied with this result, but I know that you're going to be carrying your conversation forward. All those in favor for the recommendations in the staff report? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We are now dealing with item TE 29.20, which is going to be heard with TE 2914. We do have speakers here, so what I'll do is I'll call the speakers to speak to the matter while Councillor Fletcher hopefully is aware that her item is up and she has... Oh, she's here. Great. So I'm just going to read the titles just for into the public record. We're dealing with TE 29.14, alterations to a heritage property intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement 462 Eastern Avenue. In conjunction with that, we're hearing from deputants on 462 Eastern Avenue, official plan amendment and zoning amendment applications, request for directions report. I'd like to call Luke Wendish to speak.
Chair, could you just be clear that deputants can speak on either one or both?
Sure. Just to clarify,
not required to speak on.
If you need to hear that again, you can speak to one or both matters.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and councillors. Actually, just as a small item to start, we'd like to slightly shift the order of speakers on the agenda. We'd like to begin with Ms. Deschman. I will follow, then Ms. Levy, or sorry, Mr. Gerard, followed by Ms. Levy.
Okay, so this is Mr. Windesh. So I will...
Oh, sorry, I would follow Ms. Deschman.
Okay, so let's hear from Ms. Deschman first then.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and attention today. My name is Abby Deschman. I'm a resident at 126 Booth Avenue, which is just a house that's just north and across the street from the proposed development. I'd like to speak not to the heritage aspects today, but to the proposed direction to the city solicitor on the zoning and official plan amendments. I'm here in my personal capacity. I'm also here speaking on behalf of the Weston Bakery Redevelopment Community Coalition. It's a group of residents and neighbors that have been meeting and discussing and engaging in this process for coming up to 2 years now in an effort to provide what we hope are helpful, positive contributions and ensure that this development is the best development it can be and really makes a positive contribution to the neighborhood. There are several aspects of this proposed development that we fully support. We fully support the retention of the heritage building. We think it is an important landmark and are very happy to see that preserved. We also support increased density in this neighborhood, assuming that the necessary amenities like public transit, childcare, recreational space follow the additional people. And we also support aspects of this site plan. We like the townhouse frontage that comes along the Booth, the most residential neighborhood. And we like the additional trees. There's a lot here that is good. However, Community members do have fundamental issues with a few aspects of the proposal before you today, and so we're here to ask that you do not support this proposal before the OMB. There are three core concerns that community members have been continually raising. They are height and massing, traffic impacts, and parking. We have other members who are going to talk to the latter two. I will speak to height and massing. On the height, so this proposed development is 27 meters. That's without the mechanical penthouse. With that, you add to 31.8 meters. It's surrounded on three sides by two 3-story residential houses. Those are zoned to a maximum of 12 meters. Accepting, and we do fully, that Eastern Avenue is appropriate for higher buildings. It is a more industrial commercial street than the other ones around it. We do not believe that 27 meters is an appropriate height for a mixed-use building on that site. The city's mid-rise guidelines state that the maximum height for a mid-rise building along an avenue should be equal to the right-of-way. In this case, we're looking at Eastern Avenue. That's a right-of-way of 20 meters. The existing building on that site, the Heritage Building, is 21 meters. We think that's an appropriate height. We don't think that we should be going above that height, particularly given that this is really in the midst of very low-rise residential detached, semi-detached houses. We are concerned not only about the appropriateness of that height at this site and the impact on the adjoining properties, but also the precedent it will set for Eastern Avenue. This is an area that is likely to undergo a lot of development, we think, in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And we want to ensure that that development is appropriate to the street, to the neighborhood, to the community. And I'll also just note that 1 block north, Queen Street East, went through an extensive process and decided that the appropriate height for new builds on Queen Street was going to be 20 meters. So we really think that that is in line with city guidelines, as well as the character of the neighborhood and the site. The massing. So this lot is not a standard lot. It occupies an entire east-west block, all the way from Booth Avenue to Logan, and it is over 3 times as deep as the ideal lot depth that is set out in the mid-rise guidelines. This means that that lot extends very significantly to the north into a 2-story residential neighborhood, and the impacts of just applying the standard step backs in the mid-rise guidelines actually don't really work to provide for an appropriate transition to the residential neighborhood. So there are many drawbacks, potential drawbacks to living across from an industrial bakery. Hindi, who's going to speak to you in a minute, will tell you that fresh baked bread is not always welcome after 18 years. That smell gets on your nerves. But the actual existing building provides for a good transition. It starts at a 1-story addition, it rises slowly to 2 stories, and then reaches the maximum 21 meters of height on Eastern.
I'm going to invite you.
I'm out of time. So
yes, you are out of time, but I'm going to invite you to answer questions from members if they have any. Then we will be hearing from Luke Windish. Oh, sorry. Yes, you can do that. My apologies. Questions of the speaker.
What was it you'd just like to finish telling us, please?
Thank you. So the new proposal, and I'll be brief, would dramatically alter this massing. The building would rise much more quickly, impacting houses to the east and the west of the site in a way that wasn't contemplated in the mid-rise guidelines. We think there needs to be a slower transition to the surrounding neighborhood, and that would really be in keeping. And we are very open to working with the city, working with the developer. We have been to date. We have come to these processes and shared our concerns, and we would very much appreciate the opportunity to continue those discussions.
So you have had a conversation with the developer about the massing and the 2-story homes on Booth, or the 12 meters height, and have they substantially changed anything after those conversations?
There have been changes to the proposed site plan. There are, particularly on Booth Avenue, there have been increased step backs. On Booth, the height, however, has not changed. And the current proposal in the city's report before you is that the step backs on Booth would start at 18 meters and go up at a 45-meter angle. The houses are 12 meters, are zoned to a maximum of 12 meters. This is still going to be a very high and steep building facing very low residential for a significant portion of that block.
And you're worried about when you hear about traffic later, but this is actually rezoning from an employment use, which this is an ongoing OMB case with many different things: floodplain, employment rezoning, and now the actual project itself. Have you opposed the rezoning for residential at this site?
No, we have not.
And the flood, you're happy with the flood mitigation? You feel that it won't be causing you any trouble?
To be honest, we trust the experts in city planning and the province to know that the flood issues are appropriately dealt with. We don't have the expertise on that.
That it won't cause any extra flooding for you?
Definitely it's a concern, but at this point I don't have the expertise to weigh in, and I trust the city's processes and provinces to address those issues.
So you would like to see the heritage building maintained, the height be lowered?
Yes.
And a better relationship with the existing 2- and 3-story buildings?
Yes.
Residential, that are on Booth and on Logan?
That's
After living with, how long was the bakery there?
How long was the bakery there?
A long time.
1890s.
1920s.
When it was Brown's Baker.
Since 1920, it's had that use. So your concern is making sure that with the new use, that it's respectful of the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And somebody's going to talk about traffic, so I will hear about that later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for the questions. Luke Windish.
Yes, thank you very much. At this point, you should have received a letter that actually summarizes the broad concerns of the community group, the Weston Bakery Redevelopment Community Coalition, and other community members, and will summarize many of the points that you've heard today. I'm going to echo many of the concerns raised by Ms. Deschman, but as a resident at 116 Moore Street, I am not on a boundary street of this proposal. I'm a block away. And I and other residents of my street share significant concerns about overall traffic area impacts or traffic impacts in the area. I will say that I am a member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the Unilever Precinct development. And in that capacity, I've been privy to some of the significant transit infrastructure plans that are planned for the area, including the downtown downtown relief line, Smart Track, the Broadview Transit streetcar extension, and a Gardner redirection. Those significant transit infrastructure plans are years away. The developments that are happening in this neighborhood today are significant and myriad. As a result, the principal points of access to the neighborhood, which really include the Eastern Avenue extension, or Eastern Avenue, and the Lakeshore onto Carlaw turn coming off the Don Valley Parkway and the Gardner Expressway, remain significant entry points to the neighborhood. In the BA Group report that is used to underpin the traffic study for this particular development proposal, they comment that although transit will be a significantly used mode of transportation for this, or public transit will be a significant node for new residents, they concede that the majority of new residents will still rely on motor vehicles as their principal mode of transit at 35 to 40% of preference. The report also projects that certain intersections in the neighborhood that are already operating near volume capacity ratios of 0.92, where 1 is considered maximum, are projected to go up to 0.98. So that includes, for example, the Lakeshore to Carlaw northbound turn, which at rush hour and the evening peak already backs up onto the exit ramp coming off of the Gardner. So that's projected to increase to 0.98, which is at saturation for all intents and purposes, with a significant pedestrian and cycling infrastructure route in the Lower Don Valley Trail running right across it. I think that is ripe for conflict and continued challenges if traffic impacts or inflows to the neighborhood continue unmitigated. That all said, I think that the traffic study is actually well considered. It does consider numerous sites and residential developments around this proposed lot, and considers them in terms of a background volume context. However, that said, there are a few things that are concerning to me about the report and I believe deserve further study. First and foremost, In some instances, their volume to capacity ratios decrease. So that, sorry, I'll re-articulate that. The studies state they go up when we consider background conditions, but then when they factor in the actual site-specific proposals and traffic influxes from that, the volume ratios go down, which seems a little bit paradoxical. They've also noted that certain infrastructure projects like the downtown relief line are outside of the scope of the study, yet they cite those projects as means to help mitigate things like backlog at Eastern Avenue and Logan, which is a significant intersection in the immediate vicinity of this development. And finally, and probably most concerning to me, is that the report does not consider any of the commercial developments that are happening in the neighborhood. So to cite specific examples, 721 Eastern Avenue, which is the GM facility, and the Unilever precinct are both massive commercial or employment projects that are not considered in this study report. Those will bring, for sure, certain to bring in more vehicle traffic, especially during morning and evening peak hours, which are our principal areas of concern in terms of volume to capacity ratios today. As a community group, we did request to the City Traffic Engineering Department on October 23rd for them to expand the scope of the traffic studies to include 721 Eastern and other in the larger area context. We have not received a response, and upon reviewing the city planning report, I'm not personally satisfied, and I think there are many areas of concern that remain about the overall traffic impacts for the area. And we just seek for a further opportunity to discuss those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any members with questions for the speaker?
Yes,
Councillor Fletcher?
I do. So the BA report actually mentions some of the overload on existing streets, particularly when the Gardner came down, Carlaw became quite a heavily used traffic street.
Correct.
And you said that intersection is at 0.98 capacity at
It's
Lake
projected to. The Lakeshore to Carlaw left-hand turn in particular, which is already currently operating at 0.92, is projected to increase to 0.98.
And the impact, Moore Street School has a catchment area that goes down south of Queen Street and all the way south of Eastern, actually, into the employment area.
Correct. Includes residences that extend down to Lakeshore Avenue.
To Lakeshore.
Yep.
And there's a lot of school children. Was that mentioned in the BA group?
I don't remember specific mention of the school context in the BA report, but I can't say for certain.
And that intersection at Carlaw and Eastern was named by the mayor as one of the 10 worst congestion intersections in the city. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that.
Was that mentioned anywhere in here?
I do not remember that being mentioned in the BA report.
And so the study that we're talking about in adding this area into, I'm going to ask staff about that later, but that would look at all of the developments on Eastern Avenue and being traffic related, given
yes, my concern to date is
721 future at
the Unilever
site,
precinct,
and then any other sites on Eastern Avenue.
Yes, I can't say specifically, but it does appear to me today that the BA report really looks at residential developments only and not employment developments.
Okay, I'm going to have that reviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other questions for the speakers? Okay, our next speaker is David Gerard, followed by Hindi Levy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm a resident on Booth Avenue. My concern, which is shared by many in the neighborhood, is the conflict between traffic and kid safety in the laneway north of the site. This section of laneway north of the development is the primary walking route for kids and parents to Morris Public School within this quadrant of its catchment. To me, this is a unique urban experience which is worth protecting and ultimately allows for a more livable neighborhood. The proposed configuration of the underground garage ramp directly opposite, at the opposite end of the north-south portion of the lane, will increase the likelihood of vehicle traffic proceeding north and conflict with kids and parents within the lane on their way to school. The exacerbating factor is that the peak morning traffic generated from the development directly coincides with the greatest number of pedestrians in the lane. For vehicles leaving the development who plan to travel west along Queen Street, the direct route north through the lane provides an option that is shorter in distance and avoids waiting for the light at Logan and Queen, or what may be multiple lights. The traffic engineering argument is that there would be a tendency for drivers to choose the route with the traffic light and patiently wait a little longer. But the reality is that after waiting just to get onto Logan and then waiting through a couple of lights at Queen Street and still not getting through the intersection, that option may not be all that attractive anymore. Even if many do choose to wait for the light, the most aggressive drivers, people in a rush, or people who lose their patience with traffic in general, will try to make up time by cutting through the lane where there is no vehicular traffic to slow things down, only some pedestrians to contend with. Drivers who choose the lane route may be lesser in number, but potentially create a more dangerous situation. Not only do the peak volume of vehicles and kids coincide, but we are mixing the most vulnerable with the potentially most aggressive drivers. The future Unilever site, which may not need to be considered in this application, will be a future massive traffic generator in the area and has the potential to turn the traffic report upside down. This could make Eastern Avenue a far less viable route for drivers leaving the Weston development, where currently it may be anticipated to take a large amount of the traffic. Parents and kids have been using this lane decade after decade. If we choose to recognize this, we'll see that the neighborhood has already determined what is valuable within their public realm, even if it is not officially recognized by the city. We recognize that laneways need to safely accommodate all modes of transportation, but by adversely increasing vehicular traffic, walkability suffers. However, with respect to the Weston development, we feel that both can coexist, but that vehicular traffic needs to find its way onto the road before traveling through the lane and creating an unsafe situation north of the site. To mitigate our concerns, we are proposing that the underground garage ramp be relocated to the north end of the building wing along Logan Avenue, which also in the process creates a more usable landscape courtyard at the center of the development. The underground garage ramp would then exit onto the lane connection directly at Logan instead of drawing vehicles further into the laneway as currently proposed. A local example of this condition exists at Carlaw and Dundas, which provides underground garage parking access for residents in addition to a public parking lot. We feel this change would greatly increase the likelihood that drivers would opt for the route directly out to Logan and help reduce conflicts with kids and parents who currently walk through the lane. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions for the speaker? Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. Is there no direct route to Logan from this development, no?
No direct routes? I would not say it's direct. So they're at the south end of the lane, so they'd have to travel.
I didn't hear that.
I would say it's not direct. They're traveling north through the lane and then turning right through another connection between the laneway and Logan Avenue.
So you think it's too circuitous?
It could be more direct, but the location that it is now, in a way, favors the, I think, unintended route of traveling north through the laneway.
And does the BA traffic study discuss that at all? Is there any reference to that lane in the traffic study?
I think that I think there was a reference to the lane, but my recollection is that they didn't see it as any concern.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Our next speaker is Hindi Levy.
Thank you very much. I actually live right next door to the building, so there's a lot at stake for me up here. And yes, the smell of bakery after about 2 years does wear on you. So again, we're not complaining about the fact that there's a development coming next door to us, but we are a little leery or very leery about the massing and the effect that it will have on the residential area, inasmuch that it is part and parcel of a few developments that are happening in Leslieville at one time. My issue is to deal with the parking. So at this point in the stage, Leslieville has been gentrified at a speed that I have never seen in any other area. It has all these very fine businesses and restaurants, which are become a destination. And even though we do have a very good public transportation system, people are still coming in with their cars. So the side streets in the area have now become inundated with people that are trying to park. The west side of Booth Avenue, all the homes on the west side of Booth Avenue do not have alley parking. They only have street parking. So, which is an important thing to understand, because that means that there's already a strain for the people that are living on the west side to find parking on a regular basis when there is activities at Jimmy Simpson's and during the weekends when the restaurants, and especially during brunch hour. And there is going to be two different developments. There's one on Queen and Booth, and now there's going to be one on Queen and Eastern, and it's going to significantly increase the amount of people that are coming to the neighborhood. And there might be another one on the other corner of Queen Street. There's been rumors, but we've never quite seen what will happen. So Booth is a very long street, and that way it means it could be a long walk to the nearest parking spot for families that are bringing home their groceries or their children from a long day. There is a concern that these additional developments will further undermine the residents' ability to find parking with any proximity to their own home. Regardless that each site will have its own parking, it is human nature to simply park on the street, especially if you feel that you need your car again. Many people feel that it isn't inconvenient to anyone else if they only are parked temporarily. You know, don't worry, I'm going to leave in 5 minutes. The development next to me will also have commercial spaces, and they have included parking for the retail. But again, there's a good chance that most people will feel that they're only running in and will take advantage of any available spaces on the street. The city has discussed options that are available and have made a commitment to work with the residents to mitigate the effect of the increase in parking issues to the residents. But this development does not stand on its own. It has become part of the intensification of the area. By reducing the density of this project, it will alleviate some of the pressure on the parking on the street. The actual number of people that will live and visit need to be taken into context of all the changes that are coming. We know that there are big plans in the future for further changes to public transit, and in fact, this area may be a hub. But at this time, people are still driving and parking, and we have witnessed firsthand the effect on our neighborhood on the increase in population. And if I'm going to just change for a second, at the expense of sounding like the crazy tree lady, I would also like to mention that this development will cut down a big, beautiful pine tree that sits behind my house. This tree needs a permit to be cut down. As an evergreen, this tree acts to protect the birds in the winter, including the annoying blue jay. And it is used by the migratory birds in the spring. There have been times in early spring that you can't hear yourself for the cacophony of bird songs that come from this tree as they move over from the beach. I would also hope that this committee can take into account a request to try to save the tree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker, Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, you don't, what I'm hearing from you is you aren't sure that the traffic report is taken into the kind of zone of impact of this new development, and that it should be looking at everything else going on in the neighborhood, not simply the one development.
Absolutely. Yes. It's not just, I mean, there's the development at Queen, there's another development at Queen that's existing now. Eastern has all these plans that are coming up. I was, around for 629. We have the GM. I imagine there's also other plots of lands that you can see will eventually start becoming condos in that area as well.
And is there any commercial parking in the proposed parking lot?
There will be.
There will be some commercial parking.
Yeah, but again, most people will probably park on the street if they see a parking spot on the street instead of, meander themselves into the lane and find themselves some parking inside the square.
In describing the area, do you know if BA put in their report that there is no, laneways are very typical in East Toronto. Everybody has a lane, except for the west side of Booth, and I guess it would be the east side of Lewis or Empire.
Yeah.
And so is that mentioned, do you know, in that
I don't
planning?
know.
You don't know if that's in there?
I don't know.
And the tree, are you aware if there's been any application made to remove that tree?
Well, the report said that an application needs to be made. I don't know if one's been made or not.
I see. I'll ask staff if that's been made, because in your understanding, that tree, without removing that tree, the plan would have to change. But I'll check with
No, the
planning.
plan definitely has to change to keep the tree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? Or sorry, any other questions? No? We are 3 minutes to 12:30. I don't believe we have time to hear the balance of the speakers. Okay, and it seems to me some of you have lunch meetings. Are there any quick items that we can deal with? And we're going to have to come back right after lunch to deal with this. Councillor Davis.
On item number 8.
Item number 8.
There are 2 motions. This is the...
So can we just read the...
item number 8.
Let's just read the title for the public record.
Old Historic Village, and it is a rezoning that changes the setback, and it also, there are, this motion requests our staff to continue discussions, to look at sources of funding and a method to remove some hydro poles that are currently in the sidewalk. Oh, what I do want to note that there's a typo in this.
Sorry, I don't think it's 1008. It can't be an even number on your side of the street.
Oh, sorry. It's 1009. Thank you very much. The other thing of note is that there was an error in the original report, which is being corrected, which actually is going to increase the setbacks as opposed to reduce them, but that's been dealt with as a technical error.
Okay, are there any questions?
I would just move.
Okay, are there any
the
questions?
staff recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. And the item as amended? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We have time for one more super quick item. I'm going to recognize Councillor Bailao. Her hand was up first. Sorry, Councillor McMahon.
Item 29.61, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, just staff recommendations.
Okay. Are we ready for that? 29.61. Okay, so we're just moving the contents of the letter. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, we can do one more. Councillor McMahon, I'm going to recognize you.
Okay, maybe a package deal because it's TE 29.55 and 0.56, and there's a motion for each, same motion. My staff sent.
Did the clerks catch that? It's item. I'm sorry. Actually, we won't have time. We're going to.
Okay, we'll do it first thing after lunch, thanks.
We will do it after lunch. Right after lunch, we'll do some quick releases and then resume to this item. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see everybody in 1 hour. Okay. Sorry, and I should not have.
No, it's okay.
I was overly ambitious.
No, I just had, like,